everyone. Thank you for joining me. I hope you're all doing fine. This is a new episode of the Carol Azams Show. My guest today is a woman who is an advocate of human trafficking, who has held the position of an executive director in a safe house for survivors of human trafficking. Before I let her introduce herself, I just want to let you know that I'm supposed to have two guests on the show today discussing the same thing, the same issue of human trafficking. Unfortunately, the second guest is not able to join us. I guess that is going to be a show for another day. I am going to let Cheryl to introduce herself properly to you. Cheryl is joining me all the way from Texas in the United States of America. So, hi Cheryl, thank you for joining me on the show. How are you doing today? Can you please introduce yourself to our viewers? So let's.
Hi, Carol. My name is Cheryl Briggs, and I am worked in the anti-human trafficking movement for about 11 years, and I work in the United States. I have worked from case management advocacy all the way up to executive director of a safe house for adult women. I currently am employed as a survivor leadership coordinator for a nonprofit, and my job is to mentor and help survivors in maintenance who have chose to go into a leadership capacity of some sort in their future, to mentor them and guide them on ways to, first of all, learn to take care of themselves, to have a voice, and then to do what they're passionate about. And because not every survivor wants to get up there and tell their story or work in that capacity, it's very unique. But because of our trauma, we really need to make sure that we have the support that we need and we have the proper guidance.
So let's dive into this very quickly. Human trafficking is a big issue. It's a big problem. Cheryl, how big is human trafficking in the world, and why do people engage in it?
Human trafficking is a major problem. There is some debate on the three top global industries, illicit global industries, that we absolutely know that drugs are probably still number one. Drugs have a bigger industry, bigger amount of money that they make every year. But then you have guns and human trafficking, and they're not really sure which is second and which is third. I think that the biggest difference with the rust and human trafficking is that human trafficking encompasses so much. It goes from sex trafficking to labor trafficking to organ harvesting to migrant farm workers to domestic workers to debt bondage, peonage. There's just all types. There's many ways that you can use a human being. And I think the biggest thing is that they're just treated as a commodity. So you could sell a goat or a cow, once. You can sell a car once. You can sell drugs once. They only get to use them once. But you could sell a human being over and over and over.
In your capacity and from your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in working with victims of human traffic?
I deal more with the immediate survivor and their needs. I have worked a little bit on policy and legislation, and I've testified at some congressional hearings, and that's very important work. But I think that my main concern is when I initially get in contact with the survivors, making sure that their basic needs are met. I mean, as far as food, shelter, clothing, medical care, mental health stability. There a lot of times, we get access to them through law enforcement agencies after doing a sting or a bust. And while they do initially have to talk to law enforcement, they don't really push them anymore because they understand that what they're going to get from them is not very, it's not going to be very valuable at this moment, because their brain is so traumatized that the order of things is sometimes confused, and it makes them look like they're not telling the truth, even though they are. So I think that, that's one of our biggest challenges. And the other thing is, I think that, they can always interview them down the road once they're healed, because at the beginning, they're really not in any shape to do any of that. As far as the challenges, the most for me is the youth and the adults. They need trauma-informed care. They need we don't just need bed space. We need bed space with people who have been trained to work with this population and not get into power struggles, and to learn how ways to empower them. And I think that, we, as far as crisis centers, I mean, when you talk about youth, there's a lot of restrictions and a lot of guidelines and a lot of requirements and licensing that's required to work with them. But there's a reason for that. It's because they're not only very vulnerable, but that it's very intense work and very complicated work. Then you talk about like the adults. We have a very hard time finding places for adults at all, because most people feel like we can save the children, but what they don't understand is the majority of adults were trafficked as children and just never ever got identified and never got out. We need to be very careful, I think, when we're identifying people and taking them out of that environment, because if you take them out and you don't train them and you have no way of providing them with the skills that they may need and the healing time that they may need in order to move on in their life, then the chances of them going back are greater, and that places them at a great risk for retaliation, for violence on the street, and for their situation to get worse. And most of all, they begin to lose hope. We just have to remember that the restoration or recovery, it's not linear. It's like zigzag. It's up and down, and 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. And we never know when that person's going to get stuck there. And so we have to be able to have the commitment to work the time that it takes.
Cheryl, victims are usually individuals who have, in different instances, had their lives turned upside down, their mental and physical health messed up in one way or the other. Are they themselves usually cooperative and willing to accept help when you approach them?
I think that if you think about, I'm going to go do this work and they're going to be so grateful for me, I think that you're fooling yourself, because, especially when we work with teenage girls, and boys, the younger group, they're in a particularly difficult situation, because they believe, a lot of them, that they chose this life because they had a boyfriend, and the boyfriend groomed them and convinced them that he was the man for them, that this was going to be the love of their life, and they fell for it hook, line, and sinker. And then he said, one day he just says, I need you to do something for us, okay? And because she believes he loves her, or he believes that she loves her, they do it. And so when you try to, you cannot work with the youth and try to explain to them that they were just being used. That's not going to work, because they're going to resent you. You're not going to bond with them. You have to be able to explain to them that you're going to be there for them no matter what, and you cannot. Over time in therapy, then they will come to understand that they weren't volunteers. They were actually exploited and manipulated by older people to do what they're doing. They are not usually happy or cooperative. But that's okay, because what they are doing is surviving. They're in survival mode, and we understand that. And so we try to, it's kind of like taking a 17-year-old person with a 8-year-old emotional state, and a 30-year-old mental state, because they've been living an adult life and they're not ready. And you try to bring all that together so that they can become like a whole person. And that work takes a lot of time sometimes. And I think that the majority of the reason that they're resistant is because of fear. They're afraid. There may not be a lot of, I do not believe that there are corrupt cops all over the place. And even if they're like 0.1%, but I don't know who that 0.1% is, I'm going to be rude to everybody. I'm not going to ever talk to cops. I'm going to be horrible to them, because I never know which one it is that may be working with my trafficker. And so I think that, what we have to do is kind of develop a sense of felt safety for these people where they understand that, like, I'm here and I'm going to meet you where you are, and I'm not requiring anything of you except, just work with me. They're gonna test us. They're gonna go through things that are gonna be super super difficult, um, and sometimes their behavior and their actions will put people off. And what we have to learn to do is to look for the need behind the behavior, and not go with punishments and restrictions. And we just, whatever we can do to empower someone. And to empower someone requires choices, and that's something most of them have not had before.
When people talk about human trafficking, most of the times it is about women and children. And I think this is so because majority of people out there are of the opinion about women and girls being exploited and easily sold into prostitution. I would like you to tell our viewers, can men be victims of human trafficking?
Well, I'm glad you asked about the male population, because I think very few people believe that males are being trafficked as well. While the majority of male boys and adult men are trafficked into labor trafficking mostly, but 70% of all trafficking is sexual exploitation. And so you see boys at a much younger age being trafficked, 8 to 9, 10 years old, used in sex tourism, and they are also, the numbers increase over the age of 30. Um, in 2015, there was a study done by Polaris, and they said that in 2015, the majority, almost all the girls who were victims of sexual exploitation, but so were 50% of the boys. We also know that from studies that, they say 1 in 4 girls would be sexually assaulted or abused before the age of 18. Well, that number is higher for boys. It's 1 in 6 before the age of 18 who will be sexually assaulted or abused. And so they have a higher prevalence rate, and I think that they don't they don't talk about it as much. So it's not it's kind of, I think for the boys it's a more shameful thing that they carry. So even though those numbers are going up, as to the involvement of the male gender in sexual exploitation, absolutely. And they're more involved in pornography and sexual personal services than actually walking the streets per se. I'd like to mention also that this study was done, and they did not have enough numbers to include transgender as its own category. However, that is changing, and we have more numbers, and hopefully a study will come out on that, the prevalence, because it's a very high prevalence rate amongst transgenders as well, and so is the violence and abuse. So I'm glad you asked that question.
Finally, Cheryl, do you think that the coronavirus has impacted on human trafficking? So many countries have been on lockdown. Do you think that has helped to curb the activities a bit?
The coronavirus has had a big impact on our whole society, on the whole world, actually. Um, I have seen various ads saying, people making comments about, we have to wear masks, you can't see their mouth, and, what if they're asking for help. And in my experience and in my education that I've learned is, most of the time what you see is fear in people's eyes, and the masks do not cover their eyes. We weren't seeing their mouths moving before. And so I think that the mask thing is a little overblown, and I don't think it's really applicable. However, COVID and the economy and the jobless rate and the financial despair that a lot of people are in has caused them to lose their housing, which predators are out there just waiting to see people that are suffering and have lost everything and really have no hope of getting up. Because they have no resources. And so predators are definitely out there looking for destitute people that they can prey upon. And in a time like this where we're socially isolated and we're not really gathering and supporting each other in that way, luckily that there are so many organizations and so many survivor networks that are virtual now. And it's kind of like everybody's kind of getting used to that. And so the support has been there. But we have been able to get grants for hotel stays for some of our survivors, and COVID has an impact in the whole society. But what it does is it creates another class of vulnerable people who are financially unstable because they've lost their jobs, because they've gotten sick, because they've lost their homes. Before the moratorium on evictions was lifted and then put back in place. But still, it's the economy that is affecting and driving these people to desperation, and they become easy pickings. And I just think we have to continue to look for that and address that. And also online, all of our children, most of them are doing schooling online or have for the last 6 months, and so they're constantly online. And there's 50,000 predators at any one time online with our children the minute they log on, if not more. And so the social media scene has heated up, and you hear more and more about the little young people being lured from their homes, or lured into situations that place them at great risk of imminent danger. So yeah, COVID has affected a lot of things, and it has put a greater risk in some areas that are affected with trafficking.
It's a bit. Thank you, Cheryl, for joining me. I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. That has brought us to the end of today's show. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I look forward to come your way again with a new guest to discuss more topics on the show. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Bye-bye.